Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to BioShock Infinite. Where we last left off, we were in the middle of finding a mask.
Try it again. Maybe your taste buds have matured. Hello, Booker. Where have you been hiding her?
And we've also been in the middle of exploring a version of Rapture that isn't already gone to shit.
I understand why Ryan wants to lock all of Fontaine's men up in that department store, but why on earth should we have to feed them? Isn't a prisoner just another parasite?
What you want to do, Irene? Hang them all?
You said it, not me.
Well, that is kind of an uncomfortable question that brings about. Also, this is me at a diner. Just sort of sitting there looking out the window. Guess he likes the music.
That's what parasites want you to believe. Gray. There's no such thing as gray. There's good, there's bad, and nothing between the poles.
Uh-huh.
Another one. You got an issue with my food, pal. You're welcome to put on an apron.
And I suppose he would be the only person in the world who understands the difference between good and evil, wouldn't he? That's sort of how it works.
I had all of these visions before coming down here of utopia. Every man with his hand on the great chain, the wheel of progress turning. Every cliche you can imagine. And what is the first thing that happens when I open up shop? Petty thievery. Now I have to lock all my valuables in the closet. Remember 2076. It's the problem with coming to Utopia, is that it still has the people.
Tip. I don't think these supermen know the meaning of the word.
Yeah, there is an odd question about why people like that always seem to not leave tips. I mean, it is supposedly a bonus given to the server for excellent service. So why not? Their paychecks are defined by the fact that they're supposed to obtain a certain amount of tips each day. Yeah, this guy's got nothing.
When Ryan take over Fontaine Futuristics, scene of a terrible violence. Splicers burning each other to bits. Lucky ones not killed, sent to department store prison instead. Suchong think he dead man too. But then Ryan comes to Suchong and says, Suchong want to be buried in filthy store, or Suchong want to make a good salary? Work for Ryan. How much salary? Asks Suchong. This Ryan find very funny.
Apparently he didn't have much aside from a...
Bothering you, miss. Say the word, I'll take care of it.
Apparently he didn't have much aside from a...
Chain guides all of our efforts. Even if we can't see it, it's there.
Was it the Great Chain who took over Fontaine Futuristics? Sorry, lady.
Asian stereotype. An offensive Asian stereotype. What the fuck? That's what I'm trying to say here. Sure enough, with that out, nobody's talking anymore.
Guten Tag.
Herr Schmidt.
And I suppose everybody at this time and place knows the tobacconist.
Dr. Steinman told me he uses my picture to judge facial symmetry.
Darling, that line actually work on anyone before closing time?
Frank Fontaine. Now there was a straight shooter. One of us.
I don't want to follow one of us.
You imagine having a beer with Andrew Ryan? Probably some teetotaler. Don't trust a man don't drink, least from time to time. I'm not looking to be an obstacle to your accomplishments. I'm a modern fella. I just want to walk next to you and admire your stride.
Darling, you do know how to talk to a woman.
Sexual intimacy is no different than any other commodity, friend. You sell soybeans, I sell companionship.
Ugh, it's disgusting.
That's the Bible talking, pal. That's your mother talking. What does Ryan say? Petty morality? You can keep it.
One girl in the corner is going to be fixing her makeup forever.
Sir, ma'am.
Awful lot of classical stuff around here, considering that they've got pop music.
See that dish I walked in with? Will you give her the star treatment, pal? That'll make it worth your while.
Of course, right away.
What is this piece?
It's by Trenet, but of course, covered by Mr. Reinhardt.
Oh, it's lovely. Isn't it lovely?
Oh, yes.
Oh, music does something to me. Especially something in this
Gotta
game.
find that box.
Primal, isn't it? Part of us that exists before thought, before logic, purely sensual.
The finest music is us in places.
That we never knew existed.
Yes.
Can you turn it up? Oh, it's so intoxicating. But also powerful and masculine. Oh, yes, one feels the urge to surrender.
Nothing. Well, only one place left.
I must go. I must go. Even one more note shall prove my undoing.
No tune. That's a bit disappointing.
Nothing?
No. Got one place left, though.
And if that proves to be fruitless?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
You got a wife? Fine. That's a contract. You got a job? Fine. That's a contract. It's all business of one kind or another. We all have physical needs. But time is a commodity. You want to spend it wooing some woman? Well, fare thee well. My clients, well, they got bigger fish to fry.
That's one way of putting it, I guess. Also, these are some really elaborate phone booths.
Ryan understands something fundamental about mankind. We want to be better than we are. That is what separates us from the jungle.
Well, I wouldn't say that's entirely true, but oh, whatever.
I went through basic with them, decent sort, but the Italians, Papa this and Papa that. They can't take a crap without a papal dispensation.
It's hard to have standards.
Ah, liquors and tobaccos.
Ah, Mr. DeWitt. Back again. And so soon.
You can buy wine here and champagne. And it'll cost you money. So be careful what you click on while you're in here.
Are you in the know? Innovation and competition are what fuel Rapture. But that fuel can be diluted with rumor or flat-out lies. The rumor monger asks, what are these so-called splicing side effects? Well, take a look around you. Do you see anything wrong with your neighbor? The rumor monger asks, why has Tenenbaum withdrawn from the public's eye? Dr. Tenenbaum is a scientific mind unparalleled, even in Rapture. She's no doubt in her lab, toiling away at her next great innovation. I heard she was in cahoots with Fontaine. Merely slander from jealous naysayers. Remember, Rapture competes through innovation, not cheap shots. Bridget Tenenbaum is a woman who represents the best of science and industry. In other words, she's a Rapture gal. Now you know.
Maybe I might be mistaken, but she's also got an awfully 80s haircut. Like, I don't think that sort of horizontal poof was quite in fashion in 1959.
How am I gonna get work with my leg all busted up like this? Foreman says I should have been more careful.
Something will turn up. Adversity breeds opportunity, that's what Ryan says.
On the other hand, a company that uses workers' compensation breeds loyalty. Isn't that a good advantage for competition?
Where have you been, DeWitt? Expect me to drink alone?
These hip flasks are gigantic, by the way.
That unpleasantness with Fontaine seems so far behind us now.
I hope all of his crowd are enjoying themselves. Locked up forever.
Gotta hand it to the old man. Locking up Fontaine's thugs in his own department store. That's poetic justice.
Well, now. Well, it looks kind of like that one rabbit guy from Donnie Darko.
But it can also be a dangerous place. Any leak is a bad one. Report any unexplained water.
You know, there seems to be some expression in a few of these paintings, but not really in that one. The white and purple one.
Take it all in.
The others seem to be trying to say something in just a few broad strokes, but the little ones, not quite so much.
Hey, pal. You want to help out the little lady?
Yes, of course. Interesting, isn't it? An original Sander Cohen. He calls it miasma.
I'm sorry, but I know precious little about art.
How does it make you feel?
I don't want to open my mouth for fear of what foolishness might tumble out.
Would you like me to tell you what it means?
Where is he hiding that box?
That's not how art works.
So much to understand.
In this piece, Cohen intended to show us the struggle of the great man, condemned to breathe the swampy air of the parasite.
You see all that in that little picture?
Yes, in fact. Now, did your companion go...
Oh, what's this one? Oh, please, it's so beautiful.
There you are, you little son of a bitch.
Something truly extraordinary. Shall I explain?
Oh, yes, please. Tell me everything. You're so knowledgeable. Why, you must be an artist yourself.
I dabble, but I'm no Sander Cohen.
Do you have anything of your own that you could show me?
Well, yes. Right over here.
You've given me so much to think about. I feel a trifle swoony. Would you mind if I return tomorrow for further education?
I shall be here at your service. Until tomorrow.
Yeah, that makes sense. The little one is by the amateur who owns the gallery. Kind of weird he's got the giant head centerpiece, though.
Good. You've located the mask.
Third time's the charm.
All right. It's best we head back to Cohen's.
Fine piece of work back with those shopkeeps. You've got a bit of the grifter in you.
For that, you can thank my father.
Oh, yeah?
He was a man comfortable in a variety of roles.
That's one way of putting it.
Why are you wasting your time with that one?
So, what kind of field you in?
Field?
Yeah, you know, occupation. Can't imagine what kind of employment would lead you to tag along on a job like this.
I suppose you could say I work in debt collection.
Alright, found another one of these need-to-know theater boxes.
Are you in the know? You've doubtlessly sampled products from Fontaine Futuristics. But do you know why Ryan Industries saved it? Frank Fontaine, business leader and benefactor of mankind? Or was he the best friend the parasite ever had? Were you aware his businesses were a front for a smuggling ring? And were you also fooled by his supposed charity work? At his free clinic, patients became test subjects, and his orphanages were places that children disappeared into and never came out. Once they learned the truth, Rapture's Central Council called for the arrest of Fontaine Futuristics' owner. But, a coward to the end, Fontaine found a hail of bullets preferable to facing justice. The council asked that Ryan Industries assume the burden of stewardship of Fontaine's ill-gotten assets. And Andrew Ryan accepted that burden for the people of Rapture. Now all citizens can enjoy these products, free of criminal taint. Now you know.
That's some incredible burden there, huh?
Fontaine got taken out by Ryan's goons for one reason, and one reason only. He built a better mousetrap.
Oh, for God's sake, Armand, you want to get us both rounded up?
So you admitted that Ryan's rounding people up?
It was a figure of speech.
The pot calling the kettle black is a figure of speech.
I keep my head low and I do my job.
Like a good German.
Now, is that a figure of speech?
Buongiorno, signore.
Days. Her little girl's been missing for days.
I'm a complete wreck if Trudy even gets a nosebleed.
So many children. It can't all be coincidence.
Apparently the little girl orphan population isn't quite big enough. Not for as much Adam as this city needs.
Suchong observe strangest of coincidences. On other side of a window, man in strange hat experimenting on Suchong's own creation. On plasmid. Man name of Fink. Outrage! Theft of intellectual property! But man name of Fink is no fool. Through addition of oxidizing agent, turns plasmid ingestible through stomach lining. Mr. Ryan very impressed with Su Chong's initiative. Theft of intellectual property. Two-way street.
Again, why the hell is he such an offensive Asian stereotype? Is that supposed to be period accurate to the fact that there were offensive racial stereotypes in 1959?
Better work. Otherwise, we'll certainly look the fools.
Trust me.
Alright, let's keep on going.
Ah, very well. Mr. Cohen awaits your participation at his performance.
How come she doesn't have to wear one?
So who is this fellow Cohen? Some sort of underworld figure?
Worse. He's an artist.
An artist who kidnaps children.
Cohen's muse is a bit more diverse. I've seen his type. Gets an idea in his head, end a conversation. Don't matter who gets hurt.
Actually traps my perspective there until the light goes on.
Dance! Dance! Move!
Well now. Getting kind of a... I don't know.
Move! That's right.
Naked Lunch kind of a vibe from this place. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I mean, there's definitely the Donnie Darko influences with the rabbit masks.
Oh, you can do better than that.
It's just a bit in the colors, a bit in the giant heads.
Be the conduit! Open yourselves to the music! To the spirit of the eternal! No. Why do you fail in this fashion? To embarrass me in front of my muse? My muse shall not be mocked. Fitzpatrick!
Please!
The stick!
For God's sake!
My muse shall not be mocked! Get them out of here! There shall be no failure on my canvas. There's no room in Rapture anymore for the artist.
Now, I know this is supposed to be a libertarian paradise, but can he literally murder 2 people and just get away with it? Not sure that's very libertarian. Bit closer to an anarchist dystopia, in fact. Oh hey, an actual rabbit. Just kinda chillin', wondering why it's there.
You?
Name's DeWitt.
Is that right? My. This one's a real biscuit. Isn't he a biscuit, ladies?
I need to ask you a few questions.
Questions? Yes. Yes. It is the work of man to ask. It is the work of the artist to answer.
You've seen this girl, haven't you?
We artists see more than most. You're more than you claim to be, little songbird. Are you not? Watch this one, DeWitt. She'll take you where you don't want to go. But I know the child in that photo is important to you. So many children flit, flit, flit away. I know where the girl is. And I will send you to her. In exchange, all I ask is a dance.
What?
I see something in you two. Art strips away artifice. Show me who you are, and I will show you where you need to go.
Cohen, son of a bitch.
Mr. DeWitt.
What?
Dance with me.
Come, come, dance! Come on, dance. Feel the music. Feel the music. Come. Oh, come on, DeWitt. DeWitt, I'm ashamed of you. Come on.
Oh, all right.
I shudder to think what greater price he might care to extract.
Fitzpatrick! Beauty and pain. They can be no more separated than birth and blood.
What do you think Cohen's customers do with the children? Do they?
Sometimes. But those types lack the capital of people like Ryan and Sucho.
That's a blessing.
You saw those little sisters? You so sure?
But if Su Chong had Sally, I'd know it.
How?
As I tied him to a chair and asked him.
So?
For 15 hours.
I don't know what to make of you, Mr. DeWitt.
Listen, we're not gonna keep...
Fitzpatrick! I see suffering in you. I know how to shine a light on your pain. A moth will become a butterfly.
That's not how zoology works. So, you know how I pointed out that Cohen's party kind of reminded me of Naked Lunch, vaguely? Well, I dropped that hint deliberately. Because while I could talk about the boom of postmodern, drug-addled artistes during the 1960s, we're technically still on 1959 in-game. Andy Warhol is still doing advertisement prints. John Lennon and Paul McCartney are still looking for a drummer to play in a band they're calling Johnny and the Moondogs. And Stanley Kubrick's finest films are still just stars in his eyes. But do you know what did exist by the end of 1959? Naked Lunch, which was first published in 1959 by William S. Burroughs, one of the original drug-addled postmodernists from the Beat generation. In fact, his writing efforts were assisted by two of the other greats. Allen Ginsberg, most famous for advancing homosexuality in the 1950s with the epic poem Howl, and Jack Kerouac, the Beat novelist who wrote On the Road. Of course, this corner is not going to be about the book Naked Lunch. I'm unfortunately too busy reading Atlas Shrugged at the moment, so instead, we'll be heading to Film Corner to discuss the 1991 film adaptation directed by David Cronenberg. And if you know anything about Naked Lunch and Cronenberg's other works, it's actually a pretty good fit. But I will say this. If you've read the book, then you haven't seen the movie. And if you've seen the movie, then you haven't read the book. But let's get this thing started. The story. Bill Lee, which is an actual pseudonym for William Burroughs, Lee being his mother's maiden name, is an exterminator who lives in New York City. The film starts by showing him blowing yellow bug powder into the cracks behind a client's furniture, but then his canister runs dry. He goes into the extermination office and claims that he ran dry because the chink behind the counter shortchanged him, and I apologize for the racial slur, but that is literally that character's only name. Then, after Bill barely avoids getting fired, he goes to a diner to visit his friends and complain about his job. His friends happen to be equally thinly veiled stand-ins for Ginsberg and Kerouac, and as he enters, the two are arguing about editing techniques. Kerouac argues that you need to avoid self-censoring your original and best thoughts, but Ginsberg isn't comfortable unless he's gone through 100 revisions. And just as an aside, the actual secret to editing is that everyone has their own approach, so go with what works for you and don't let anyone tell you different. Anyway, they suggest that Bill's bug powder problem comes from home, so he goes to confront his wife. Sure enough, his wife Joan has been snorting and injecting bug powder to get high. But rather than try and get her help, Bill decides to give it a try himself, and soon they're both addicted. Later, as Bill's talking shop with the other exterminators, a couple cops come in and drag him downtown. Once there, they confront him with his can of bug powder, but Bill explains that it's for his job as an exterminator. The cops respond by saying, "Oh yeah, I think we got a bug around here somewhere. Let's see if that yellow stuff will kill it." They then pull out a box, and a giant bug jumps out and starts frolicking in the bug powder. The cops leave to give the powder some time to take effect, and at that point the insect starts talking out of an anus along the back of its abdomen. Oh, and it claims that Bill is a deep cover agent and the anus bug is his case officer. Oh, and Bill's wife is another deep cover agent working for the evil company Interzone Incorporated, so Bill has to kill her and do it real tasty. In response, Bill nods, smiles, and then smashes the insect with his shoe before breaking open the door and then fleeing an apparently abandoned police station. When he returns home, Bill insists that he and Joan have to leave town and that what happened earlier was a hallucination. But Joan needs more bug powder, and so does Bill for that matter. So he gets on the subway to try and steal some from a coworker. He fails, but he does get some advice to go see Dr. Benway. Bill does, and Benway advises him to mix in a black powder made from the aquatic Brazilian centipede, which will allow them to kick their habit. When Bill returns, Kerouac is screwing his wife as Ginsberg recites stream of consciousness poetry to them. This doesn't seem to bother Bill much, but afterwards he suggests that he and Joan do their William Tell routine. She places a glass on her head, and Bill shoots it. Except he misses, which happens to be how William Burroughs' actual wife actually died one drunken night in Mexico City. I mean, not exactly like that, but it was the moment in the real Burroughs' life which turned him into a writer. He had no other choice. He had no other way to deal with his guilt and his other dark emotions. But as for Bill, he goes to a bar afterwards and meets a man who introduces him to a mugwump who specializes in sexual ambivalence. The mugwump speaks to him in the same voice as the bug from earlier and congratulates Bill on a job well done. He also suggests that Bill go straight to Interzone to hide from the authorities and to get a Clark Nova portable typewriter to write his reports. So after a quick farewell to Kerouac and Ginsberg, Bill Lee leaves for Interzone. It's actually Tangier in Morocco because that's where real-life Burroughs went, but we're not talking about him right now. Once in Interzone, Bill spends his time writing reports at a small restaurant full of people writing reports on their typewriters. There, he's approached by a man named Hans who thinks he's a purchasing agent for Dr. Benway, and that he's looking to buy a big supply of black meat, the centipede powder from earlier. Also, the Clark Nova eventually turns into a bug with the same voice as the other case officers, and it asks Bill to type the sentence, "Homosexuality is the best all-around cover an agent ever had." And he insists that Bill follow through on this advice. Hans later introduces Bill to Tom and Joan Frost, the latter of whom is played by the same actress as the Joan who died. They're also a pair of expat American writers, and they happen to engage in regular orgies with the local young men. After meeting at a party, Bill and Tom have a long discussion about writing, and about killing Joan Frost, although the second part happens telepathically. The next morning, Bill meets a Swiss man named Cloquet as he wakes up on a pile of sand by the beach. The two talk and kind of flirt for a while, but then Bill excuses himself. Later, he and Tom get to talking, and Tom lends Bill his Martinelli typewriter. But when he takes it home, the Clark Nova murders it, because it's an enemy agent, and it then recommends that Bill seduce Joan to get more information. Bill does this by having her type filthy prose into an Arabic typewriter called a mujahideen, Arabic for holy warrior. And once the two get to the flailing bodies phase of their tryst, the mujahideen turns into an alien facehugger with a raging boner, which then humps the two. But that's when the German dominatrix shows up and spoils the fun, throwing the facehugger/typewriter out the window. When Tom Frost shows up later, he fires Fidela, the German dominatrix housekeeper, in a fit of rage. After that, Joan abandons both Tom and Bill for Fidela's lesbian cult, and Tom takes Bill's Clark Nova at gunpoint since Bill trashed the Martinelli. With no more means left to write, Bill winds up strung out in an interzone gutter. That's where he is when Kerouac and Ginsberg find him and tell him that he's almost finished writing his novel Naked Lunch, but he's still got a little more to go. This is surprising to Bill, since he thought he'd been writing reports this whole time. But as usual, he just goes with it and sees his friends to the bus stop, explaining that he won't be coming back to New York until he's finished. Bill is still slumped in an alley when Kiki, one of the local young homosexuals, finds him and takes him to a blacksmith who repairs the shattered Martinelli into the head of a mugwump, which not only types Bill's reports, but also produces a psychoactive jism from the nobules on its head, and continues to speak to him with the case officer's voice, and advises Bill to seduce Cloquet from earlier in order to get to Dr. Benway from even earlier. So Bill goes to see Cloquet, and he brings his current lover Kiki with him, and between the two, they rather easily seduce the Swiss man. However, after Cloquet and Kiki go to see the former's parrot collection, Bill happens into the aviary and discovers that Cloquet has transformed into some kind of centipedal monster who is very literally fucking Kiki's brains out. Yeah, literally. Have fun sleeping tonight. This makes Bill unhappy since he thinks his reforged Martinelli set him up, and he arranges to exchange it for the Clark Nova with Tom Frost. However, the Clark Nova was tortured while it was in Tom's possession, and it can only tell Bill where to find Fidela and Joan. When he goes to find them, he discovers that Hans's old black meat drug factory is now a mugwump jism dispensary. Oh, and Hans is there, and Joan is there. And when Bill confronts Fidela, she tears off her skin and reveals herself to be Dr. Benway. Benway, it turns out, is the man in charge of everything, including Bill's secret agency. And so he congratulates Bill on figuring things out, and reassigns him to Annexia, some vaguely Eastern European country without as direct an analogy as Interzone and Tangier. He's also allowed to take Joan Frost with him. But when Bill gets to the border crossing to Annexia, the guards don't take his word when he claims to be a writer. He shows them a pen, but they demand he write something. So he turns to the back of his van, where Joan is sleeping, and tells her it's time for their William Tell routine. She puts the glass on her head, Bill fires the gun and misses, and the guards smile and wave him through the checkpoint. Satisfied. The end. The analysis. Now here we've got a story that needs some unpacking. It's at least clearer than the novel, what with having a narrative and all, but it doesn't exactly make the meanings behind each action obvious. Let's tackle this theme by theme, shall we? First, there's the drugs. The movie only once mentions junk, heroin, in passing, along with a real hemp paste that's popular in the Middle East. But what we see on screen is bug powder, black meat, and mugwump jism. That's not true about the book Naked Lunch, but it is a change that William Burroughs supported. He wrote an essay about the Cronenberg adaptation, and he liked the unreality that these fake drugs lended to the film. There's also the advantage that there isn't a one-to-one connection between Naked Lunch drugs and the real ones. You can make some likely guesses, like bug powder is morphine, black meat is heroin, and mugwump jism is marijuana, but it's not a perfect analogy. It's not meant to be a perfect analogy, and it's better that way. Then there's that pesky question about reality. The film drops quite a few hints along the way that what we see isn't what really exists. Bill insists after every encounter with a talking bug that he's hallucinating, and when his friends come to visit him in Interzone, there's an implication that Bill never really left New York, and that everything that's happened outside of his Interzone apartment, that being an actual flat in New York, has been taking place in his head. And sure enough, Interzone is full of references to Bill's life from before. Bugs from his extermination job, Joan, his wife, and Dr. Benway. Also, when Bill finally decides to engage with the hallucinatory reality instead of just letting it roll over him, the reforged Martinelli mugwump warns him that he'll be leaving reality behind forever if he does so. And sure enough, it leads him to anexia, presumably a state of unreality that is entirely unreachable by his friends. This is the most obvious reading of the film, and it's the one that most reviews and summaries seem to focus on. But it's not my reading. Not just because there's another more important theme to the story, but I'm not sure that reality has any place in this movie. For all the things William Burroughs did with his life before he turned to writing, Exterminator was never on the list. But on the other hand, it does give Bill the excuse to use the phrase exterminate all rational thought within the first few minutes, a phrase which happens to be the motto of both the novel and the film. Also, there are no bug powders, which are also narcotics. So the world doesn't make sense even before we're supposed to stop believing in it. And that's why I don't think Naked Lunch is intended to be about one man's descent into madness. Instead, we should take madness at face value and watch as Bill descends into other things. For instance, homosexuality. William Burroughs was a homosexual, or at least bisexual. And in real life, he didn't marry Joan out of love. Technically, he didn't marry her at all, but instead he used their marriage as an excuse to get his friend Joan and himself out of some stateside legal trouble. In the film, Bill isn't bothered at all by Joan's infidelity, William tell routine or not, and the case officer bugs all insist that he practice homosexuality to maintain his cover. Well, aside from the one time that they insist that he seduce his wife's doppelganger. But even then, he's psychically assisted by the male sex organ that sprouts from the mujahideen, and he's interrupted before anything happens by a transsexual lesbian German dominatrix housekeeper. And he's not interrupted later on when he spends a night with Kiki. At the same time, Bill also seems to have a hard time coming to terms with his homosexuality, as he treats it as a joke early on when he first speaks to Cloquet, and when he later comes across Cloquet and Kiki literally making a beast with two backs, he flees in horror and goes off to track down Joan number 2 instead. He also can't seem to understand women, seeing as he neither identifies as nor is romantically interested in the female sex. This lack of understanding is expressed by the case officer bugs, who insist that women are a completely different species from men, thus making them beyond man's ability to comprehend. But the biggest theme of Naked Lunch, the film, is this. Not a descent into madness, but a descent into being a writer. Typewriters are so important in Interzone that they become actual characters. And the writer Tom Frost is so incomplete without one that he's ready to kill Bill to get one. For his part, Bill absolutely falls to pieces when he doesn't have a typewriter. And as Kiki says to him when he's getting the typewriter fixed, fix the typewriter and you fix the life. Bill always says that he's writing reports when he's actually writing disjointed fiction. But at the same time, he's absolutely right. Good fiction is a report, a story about what you really think, a lie that tells the truth. And why not? Every photograph, every history book, and every documentary is a lie too. A representation of something that happened which the audience members will never get to actually see. Nonfiction isn't the truth. It's just a more literal interpretation of the world. And with this last theme in mind, and with some knowledge of Burroughs' life and works, the ending makes perfect sense. What turned William Burroughs into a writer? The moment he shot his wife Joan in the head. When the border guards see this, they know. Bill Lee left Interzone because he was done with it, with Naked Lunch. But he moved on to Annexia instead of New York because he was not then, and never would be again, done with writing. Thanks for joining me again in Film Corner, and I hope I'll see you soon.